Hello guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This video is a part of our tutorial series on C++, some basic interview questions for 2022. In previous two videos we saw some basic of C++ and its core concept. We see some concepts of using namespace std, and we saw how cin and cout operations are performed in C++. So in this video we will move to our fourth question, which is what are references in C++. So basically, when a variable is described as reference, when a variable is described as a reference, it becomes an alias of already existing variable. In simple terms, a referenced variable is an other named variable of an existing variable. Keeping in mind that changes made to the reference variable will not reflect in the already existing variable. A reference variable preceded with this AND symbol. Let's take a look at its syntax. So for example, we have this gfg variable of integer type whose value is 10. Now if we want to initialize an reference variable, what we will do is we will define our data type, which obviously will be the same, and then we place this AND operator, and then we give variable name and then initialize it to the original variable. Now this ref variable is referencing to this gfg variable. Basically it's storing the address of this gfg variable. So now I will move to VS Code and we will see an example of this reference operator. So I have already typed the basic template of C++, which is include IOStream using namespace std. Then we have our main function. So now I will first create an variable of integer type and assign it to 10. Now I will define an reference variable and I will name it as, let's say, ref, and it initialize it to the x. Then I will change the value of this ref variable to 20, and let us see out this. Now I will change the value of x, and now I will see out what's inside the ref variable. So let's test this code. So you can see x have the value of 20 and ref has the value of 30. So no matter whose value we change, both of these will impact each other. Now let's see some application of this ref operator. The first application is modify the passed parameter to the function. If a function receives a reference to a variable, not the exact variable but the reference to that variable, it can modify the value of the variable. For example, let me see another code example of this. So here we have a simple code by which we can use the function to modify the referenced variable value. First we have IOStream, then we have std, then we have this function. So we are defining this function for the main operator. We can also define this below the main function, but it's a good practice to define your function above the main function. So we have this simple swap function inside of which we have two variable and we have reference variable. So you can see it have type integer, and then we have this add operator, then we have our first variable, and then we have our second referenced variable. So inside this function body, first we will create a temporary variable of integer type and initialize it to the first parameter, and then we will initialize the first to the second parameter, and then we will initialize second to the temp, which is holding the value of this first parameter. Now let's move to the main function, inside of which we are defining these two integer variable. First one is a, which have value of 3, and second one is b, which have value of 3. Then we will call the swap function and pass this a and b as a parameter to this void function. So this is function call. It will stop the execution of code at this line and will transfer the code flow to this swap function, inside of which it will first the first variable holding the value of let me just type it. So initially the value of this first is 2, and the value of second is 3, and first we initialize the value of first to this temp. So now temp have the value of 2. Second we assign the value of second to the first. So now first have the value of 3, and then lastly we assign the value of temp to the our second variable. So now second have the value of 2. So you can see it has swapped both the values, and as we are passing them as reference to the swap function, so any changes made inside the swap function will affect these original two variable which are defined inside this main function. Then we will see out this to see what's the changing are. So you can see now a is equivalent to 3 and b is equivalent to 2, just like that. So let's take a look at the second application of reference variable, avoiding a copy of large data structure. Imagine a function that has to receive the large object. If we pass it without reference, a new copy of it is created, which causes the wastage of CPU time and memory. So we can use reference to avoid this. So basically what's I'm trying to say is, when you pass some variable as a parameter to the function, so they passed as a copy, and any changes made to these variable which we are passing as parameter to the function will not affect the original variable that are defined inside the main function, because it is passing it as a copy and it will take a lot of CPU memory. But if we pass this variable as references, just like we are doing here in this swap function, it will not send the copy. So let's take a look at the second application of reference variable, avoiding a copy of large data structure. Imagine a function that has to receive the large object. If we pass it without reference, a new copy of it is created, which causes the wastage of CPU time and memory. So we can use reference to avoid this. So basically what's I'm trying to say is, when you pass some variable as a parameter to the function, so they passed as a copy, and any changes made to these variable which we are passing as parameter to the function will not affect the original variable that are defined inside the main function, because it is passing it as a copy and it will take a lot of CPU memory. But if we pass this variable as references, just like we are doing here in this swap function, it will not send the copy, but it will send the address of this A and B variable. So it will not send the values but the address where these two variables are stored inside the memory. So by sending reference, we are accessing the memory address of these variable, not the values of these variable. So it will take less CPU memory, and it will obviously speed up your program or code. So let's look at an example of this. Here we have a struct. Now before C++ we use struct in C languages, but in C++ we also can use struct and object and classes both. That's why it's C++. It's an increment to the traditional C language. So we have our struct of student, which have three data members. First one is string, which is name. Second one is address, which is also string. Then we have roll number, which is of integer type. If we remove and in below function, a new copy of student object is created. We use cons to avoid accidental updates in the function, as the purpose of the function is to print s only. So let's take a look at this. We have our function void. Now void is those function which doesn't return any value. So that's why we use void when we know that this function will not return any type of value or element, because this function is only used to print these statements, and inside of this we are sending the object of student as a reference. So you can see it will save a lot of CPU and memory in your system. And third, we can use this in for each loop to modify all the objects. We can use reference in for each loop for modify all the elements. Let's take a look at the example. So we have our main function. Inside of this we have a data type of vector. Now vector, you can say, is also an type of array, but in array we have to define the number of element which we want to store inside an array. But in case of vector, you don't have to define the number of element you want to store in vector at the time you are creating a vector. So here we are creating an integer type vector having 4 values, 10, 20, 30 and 40. Now we are passing this vector in this inside of this for each loop, and we are defining this integer x and as a reference to the vector, and then we increment 5 to every element inside the vector. So when we will see out this program, the value will be something like that: 15, 25, 40, 35 and 45. So that's all from today's tutorial. In next tutorial we will see another question for cracking the beginner level C++ interview questions. Till then, take care and thanks for watching.